big bottom distills. Then they'll take another mash, maybe some soft red winter wheat, same winter wheat used in the wheated bourbons, distill that 7 times through a pair of micro distills, built to Harlan's exact specifications, marry the 2 distillates together, and distill the whole thing another 3 times for a total of 10 times distilled. It is good enough you can drink it neat. Conveniently, we provide it for you exactly that way. Feel free to go ahead, have notes, have a couple sips of this. And the important thing about a good vodka, it's not necessarily what you're tasting, it's what you're not tasting. Not going to have that nasty, metallic, medicinal aftertaste you may have had from some cheaper vodkas in the past when maybe you had less money. Yes, made your drinks. Yes.
Have they considered making 100 proof wheat vodka?
I think so. Yes, and what I heard was yes and no. We have a higher end vodka called Century. What I heard, supposedly Harlan wanted it to be 100 times distilled, 100 proof, and $100. And Mark and the upper management said no, don't buy 100 proof vodka. So probably not. Probably not that I'm aware of. Maybe they'll do it. Maybe they won't.
It's just that there's not that much available on the market, and the ones that are pretty darn good. They make sure that's really good to go out.
Yeah. They, it just depends on market cap. That's the problem. So.
They had that set string at gift shop, though.
Yeah, but it's 80 proof. Is the thing we're talking about 100 proof. Yeah. So yeah. Any other questions about the vodkas before we move on? All right. Well, the next product that we have to try, this is Buffalo Trace. So feel free to go ahead and have a nose, have a couple sips of this while I tell you some more about it. This is our flagship bourbon whiskey and our mash bill number 1, which is that low rye bourbon mash. That means that it's majority corn, as we talked about, making a bourbon, malted barley, rye flavor. As I said, it's a little bit of rye, so it might be sweeter than some other ones you may have had somewhere else. We age this 7 to 8 years or so in the middle floors of our warehouses, and we bottle this at 90 proof.
Easy drink. Yep.
To me, I think this is as close to the platonic ideal of bourbon as you're going to get. Perfect neat, perfect on rocks, perfect just take a little bit of water, fruit it down, flavor it some more, perfect cocktails. Great for the anything you need it. Oh, what do y'all think?
It's good.
Good stuff? Any questions about Buffalo Trace?
How long does a bottle last? If you buy a bottle, how long before you should absolutely drink it?
So there shouldn't be a very dramatic change in the flavor of hard liquor as it sits in the bottle. The thing is, much like a wine, it can oxidize and lose flavor over time, but that oxidation happens a lot faster in the presence of wood. So unless you put it in like another barrel or something, it really shouldn't do anything very dramatically. However, what I've seen from some other professionals who taste and work with whiskey a lot longer, they say after it's about like halfway full, probably finish it before the end of the year. And then keep it in a cool, dark place. You know, the sunlight can affect it, heat can affect it, so try to keep it in a cool, dark place. Yeah. But mostly, definitely, as long as the seal is good. So yeah, any other questions before we start moving on? All right. Well, the next product we have to try, this is the E.H. Taylor Small Batch. So feel free to have a nose, have a couple sips of this while I tell you some more about it. As you have your nose and your sips of this, you may notice it's a little bit bolder than the Buffalo Trace. Now this is also made with mash bill number 1. However, there's a couple differences between this and Buffalo Trace. One, it's about a year younger of a product from about a floor higher on average. We talked about those higher floors mean larger extractive flavors. The younger age means that those flavors aren't going to change as much over time. It's going to be a little bit bolder because that maybe have a little bit more of a tannic body. Additionally, this is a bonded whiskey, bottled and bond. It's also bottled at 100 proof. Higher concentration of alcohol means higher concentration of flavors. So we typically recommend you have a couple sips to get the flavors of it. This bonded label comes from a labeling law in 1897. It states that any product bottled and bond made by one distiller in one distilling location, one distilling season, either has a year, aged for a minimum of 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse, and then bottled at 100 proof. E.H. Taylor Jr. himself helped to lobby to have the Bottled and Bond Act passed, and it's one of the first consumer protection acts in America. Predates Beer, Food, and Rack, and everything. So to honor Taylor's legacy, most of the Taylor labels are bonded.
Aren't all the warehouses federally bonded warehouses?
Yes. Yes. The bonding is a tax designation. Basically, we owe federal taxes on every proof gallon of alcohol we produce for sale. But most of the proof gallons of alcohol we produce for sale are going to be sitting in the barrel for years before we ever bottle. So we basically write a bond, write an IOU to the government, so we're not going to pay these taxes until a certain number of years have passed, or we prepare it for sale. Nowadays, the bonding period is so long as to either be indefinite or basically difficult to enforce. It's over 20 years at this point, but it used to be much shorter. But yeah, all of our aging warehouses are federally bonded for stored product. Yes. Any other questions? All right. Well, we got one last whiskey we get to try, which is going to be Sazerac Rye. So feel free to go ahead, have a nose, have a couple sips of Sazerac Rye, let it taste more about it. This is not a bourbon. It is a rye whiskey. So instead of being majority corn, the recipe to make it bourbon, we use dry rye to make it a rye whiskey. Now we do typically use corn, as I mentioned, as a secondary flavor grain. For most of our rye whiskeys, we're going to make this a little sweeter than some other ones you may have had. We age this for 5 to 7 years in the middle to upper floors of our warehouses, a little bit longer than most other rye whiskeys in this $30-ish price range. And then we also bottle this at 90 proof. The name, Sazerac, name for rye whiskey, the name for our current parent company, and the name for a cocktail that you may be familiar with, that all comes from the Sazerac Coffee House. It was a bar in New Orleans in the 1800s. They had a bartender named Thomas H. Handy who invented that Sazerac cocktail, and it is one of the first cocktails in American history. The founders of the Sazerac company were all from New Orleans, so 3-ish generations ago when they started the liquor company, they named it after a famous bar in their town. What do y'all think? Good stuff? Yep. Any questions about the rye whiskey before we start to move on? Well, there's one last thing you have on your plate, which is that Kentucky Bourbon Ball. As you can see, there's a Gulf can on top, so if any of you have tree nut allergies, please be aware. Those are made for us by Rebecca Ruth. Candy's here in town. As far as I understand, both Rebecca and Ruth invented the Bourbon Ball together sometime after Prohibition. They are a holiday tradition here in Kentucky, and hope that you all get a chance to be around the next holiday season to enjoy some more Bourbon Balls. Now, are there any last questions about any part of the tasting, tour, distillery, anything at all?